Welcome to the K-State Pregame Show, brought to you by GoPowerCat.com and sponsored by Coldest.com and the Wooden Cork. Now let's head to the Cats and Dogs studio and your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to a new Kansas State football season and a new pregame show. We've tweaked some things with how we do business, including the name. The K-State Pregame Show is the new one. I am Tim Fitzgerald, publisher at GoPowerCat.com, and still the GPC staff bringing you a preview of every K-State football game in 2025. It's time to start that process earlier than usual because K-State and Iowa State kick off college football for everyone by playing in the Aer Lingus Classic at Aviva Stadium in Dublin, Ireland. The game's on August 23rd, as you probably know, and kicks off at 11 a.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Dublin time, and will be shown on ESPN. And what a setup for these two teams. The first time they've ever met in a season opener, one of the longest running continuous college football series by two schools that have turned into pretty good rivals. The series now has a cool nickname, Farmageddon, and it has a little heat to it. These two teams don't like each other very much, which is ironic because the programs and the fan bases are a lot alike. And we're going to see that on display in Dublin because I don't think Dublin's quite ready for this mingling of K-State and Iowa State fans. The same people in different colors will be all over Dublin throughout this week. And of course, you can tell I'm doing this in my studio, the Cats and Dogs studio, and we've been in Dublin for a while. This was pre-recorded. I hope there wasn't anything big news breaking before this goes out, but so be it. I wanted to get this in the can before we got over there to enjoy some time in, well, my homeland. Never been there. Kansas State and Iowa State is an intriguing matchup, and we're going to find out how these teams come out of fairly successful seasons in 2024 and set the table for 2025. And throughout this show, we're going to get you ready by talking to Brian Hanley extensively about Kansas State, where they're at as they head into a new season. And then Cole Carmody takes over our opponent scout, which is, a little hamstrung here because we don't know anything about Iowa State. We don't have any game film. This is a new team. We know about personnel. I sure do love Rocco Becht and other things about Matt Campbell's program, but it's a new season. Iowa State's known for sometimes starting slowly. That could be a painful thing if they do that in this game. Honestly, I'm really hoping for a competitive, entertaining, down-to-the-wire game. This is an opportunity for the Big 12 and these two programs to show its stuff because this is it. At 11 a.m. on Saturday, this is the game, and everyone will be watching. Like I said, I will be there. Ryan Gilbert is there with me, Cole Carmody, and others from the staff who are attending as just K-Staters, and we'll have complete coverage leading up to this game. And, of course, you've already seen some on Go PowerCat from Dublin. Let's get things rolling here, but first I need to tell you about our two new sponsors. We have Coldest.com, which is also sponsoring the daily delivery. And if you don't know what that is, well, this is it. Coldest.com makes the greatest insulated tumblers on the marketplace. I saw a rating that made them the highest of all tumblers in terms of preserving your cold drinks or your hot drinks. It's tailgate season. You're going to want one of these so that, nobody knows what's in there, do they? It's water. And, of course, we're also sponsored by the Wooden Cork, which is an online liquor store. Make sure you check out the Wooden Cork. You can find your rare bottles. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like a rare bourbon, a whiskey, even some tequila, they've got it at the Wooden Cork. Check that out. Life of Fitz is your code for both of those to get a discount. Let's get going now and bring in the man, the legend, former Kansas State offensive lineman on those 97 and 98 historic teams. And his name is Brian Hanley. We call him Big B. He is the host of the Big 12 Insiders. And, oh, by the way, look at this. The Big 12 Insiders game of the week is this one. Now let's bring in Big B, Brian Hanley, to get this party started. It's the inaugural edition of the K-State Pregame Show from GoPowerCat.com. Now let's get things rolling with our football analyst and host of the Big 12 Insiders, Brian Hanley. Hello, sir. How are
Hello,
you?
how's it going?
Good, man. This is tough trying to do a preview of a conference game. Usually we have a South Dakota, Missouri State,
Right.
someone that we're going to talk about, but we don't need to know the opponent, and we can just talk about K-State. This is a big game, Big B, and we don't know much going on with either one of these teams. Even as someone who covers Kansas State, colleges just limit the access. And you also, aside from covering K-State in the Big 12, you have a Steelers channel. It's a whole different world in the NFL, isn't it?
It is. Training camp is literally wide open for NFL teams. Anybody can go. The tickets are free. You can show up. So if you're a scout of another team, you can just send people to all those places. And I know some people, they run a lot of vanilla stuff. I'm like, no, they don't. I'm like, training camp is a time for you to put in and install everything. Now, game planning and all that type of stuff, they're not doing that. But yeah, they put in a lot of stuff in an NFL training camp, man, and it's free for anybody to see. In college, yeah, you get to watch stretching. You watch a quarterback though warm up and throw some out routes. That's it. They don't let anything, and it's not just K-State. That's everybody, man. They just don't give that kind of access.
Cincinnati's different. Our friend Chad Brindle says they can go to practice every day, any day, all day long. And I'm like, what? What kind of alien existence is this? I'm in the land of Bill Snyder, where, as a former coach once said, the submarine goes down in August and doesn't come up till December or January. You just don't know much what's going on. But we do have some interesting things we know about this K-State team. We start with quarterback Avery Johnson, who everyone says is much improved. He's physically improved, but Big B, he's got to take a big step in his second season as K-State starter.
He does, in the step, and I think everybody understands that he had a good year last year. People that say he had a down year or a disappointing year, maybe you're not paying close enough attention, or maybe the expectations, I should say, were a little bit too high. I heard a podcaster say he's down on K-State this year because Avery Johnson didn't win the Heisman Trophy last year. I'm like, what? And so it just doesn't make sense. So you're going to get that from some people, but I thought he had a good year. The thing that he has to do is he has to learn to throw with anticipation, understand where guys are going to be. Now, part of that, these guys have to help him. They have to be where they're supposed to be, and maybe that was a lot of it last year where maybe he didn't always trust everybody to always be where they were supposed to be. So he waited until they were open to throw the football. You can't do that. You got to anticipate and throw the ball where it's supposed to be, where the windows are going to be, and trust that your guys are going to be there. So it's not just on Avery Johnson. It's up on, obviously, the scheme guys open. It's also on the receivers. Receivers got to be where they're supposed to be. And then a crazy stat, and maybe I'm wrong about this, Fit, but I've heard this a couple different times, that K-State led the entire nation in wide receiver drops last year, which is insane. So, and like I said, we can put a lot on Avery Johnson, and we should, but people have to help him. Nobody wins alone in football. This is not flag football when you're 7 years old, where the quarterback just does wind sprints up and down the football field. You got to have a team, and he needs that.
I sometimes feel like I'm letting Avery off the hook, but that stat just jumps out at me.
Yeah.
I've heard two different numbers, 12%, 16%. Either way, it's ridiculous.
Yes.
Can you imagine being a receiver and 10% of the passes that hit you in the hands you drop? That's not doing your job at all. But it goes farther than that. I remember, I can't remember what game it was, maybe the Houston game, in which Avery Johnson had an interception. Everyone was mad at him, and our former recruiting analyst, Ryan Wallace, looked at the film and said, well, that is a put your foot in the ground, cross the field pattern that he just rounded off and headed towards the post. And Avery threw it where he's supposed to be, and he wasn't even near there, and everyone got mad at Avery. I'm like, no, that's a timing pattern where he's got to come out of that cut and put his hands up because the ball's coming. And he didn't come out of the cut. He just rounded it off. But those things just added up Also in that game, I just saw receivers just not even blocking, just standing up and then let the guy go tackle Avery or whoever's the ball carrier. It was frustrating last season, and that for me is the number one thing that this team needs to fix. The receivers have to be better, more reliable, and do all the things that come with the job.
Absolutely. It's been I don't want to say a trend, but it's been something the last few years where K-State wide receivers just haven't been up to snuff.
No.
And they've been down near the bottom of the conference as far as production, and maybe some would say ability. I don't know, Fitz. Maybe that's been the problem, is that they just haven't been as good. Well, in this league, you need to have good receivers. Just period, point blank. I mean, in any big time league, Power 4 league, you gotta have good receivers if you're trying to be good. And K-State, I would assume, is trying to be good. So the production just has to get picked up.
Yeah.
Again, I mentioned Avery Johnson has to do his part. The offensive, Matt Wells has to do his part, the line, but it's the receivers. Look, if you can have consistent downfield threats, and I don't mean, hey, we're just bombing everything down the field, but hey, what's wrong with a 12-yard dig route?
Yeah.
It's 3rd and 7. Run 11 yards and get a dig route over the middle of the field, behind the linebackers, in front of the safeties, catch the football. Maybe you get crushed by the safety coming downhill in a cover 2. Okay. But you make the catch, first down, and you keep the chains moving. There's nothing wrong with that. Too many times we haven't seen a lot of that. And I know we have great tight ends, and I know tight ends are also part of it, but you're not winning big time football. You're not winning that many games if you have to rely solely on your tight ends to be your receiving threat. I'm sorry. It's just, they're not as explosive enough to keep a defense honest. You're just not going to be able to do that. You can win 8 games, but you're not going to win a Big 12 championship if your receivers don't hold their end of the bargain.
No, you're not. And let's move on to the absence of DJ Giddens. It's the nature of college football. They come in as young men, they grow into experienced men, and if they're good enough, they go to the NFL. He's going to play a lot for the Colts because he's still getting a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Brian Anderson, and he told me flat out, DJ's hadn't played near his best football. He's got a lot more to come, and I think that means he's going to be really special. But now you have to replace him, and you don't really replace him with Dylan Edwards. These are 2 different running backs. And even Joe Jackson, who has a little more size, isn't the same guy as DJ. You throw in all the other backups, and they're not real big guys. How does this offense change without that presence of DJ Giddens between the tackles?
First of all, you mentioned offensive line. The offensive line is going to have to be able to do some things that last year's offensive line, just quite frankly, I know we've talked about it probably ad nauseum to people. They just weren't capable of doing. They weren't capable of getting outside and blocking people. Now, again, wide receivers have to do their job, but you have to be able to run some wide, some outside zone sweeps, options, things of that nature. Get guys in space. Having said that, you also have to still be able to run in between the tackles. I mean, you can't just run everything wide. That's not going to work. It's kind of the same thing last year. People figured out K-State can't run the ball wide, and we're going to stop you from running it inside. We're going to make you run it outside, and they really couldn't do that very well. So mixing it up, having more imagination as far as play calling, personnel groups, and scheme, all of that kind of stuff is going to help, but you got to get guys the ball in space, Fitz. I think that's how this running back group is going to be. Look, I don't even know if Dylan Edwards is a 25 to 30, carry or touch guy a game. Maybe he is. And if he is, great. But you always need 2 running backs. The days of giving a guy 45 touches in a football game, those days are just over, man. It's not conducive. They're going to wear down because guys are bigger, faster, stronger on the defensive side of the ball. You just can't do that on a consistent basis. You need 2 guys back there. So I think it's going to be a multitude of things on what they do. Again, you're not just replacing DJ Giddens with one guy and doing what he does. Number one, because they can't. And that's not a knock. They're just different. And different is okay. But since they are different, do the things that, their skill set. Play to their skill set. I think that's one kind of the lost art these days, because I'm not saying K-State coaches coaches in general want to make guys fit into what they want to do, where you see the most successful coaches say, okay, yeah, I know what I want to do, but that's not necessarily their skill set. So I'll frame it and we'll do a little bit of both so we can get the most out of them. I believe that's what K-State's going to do this year.
I feel better about the offensive line just because I'm hearing that the guys they brought in through the portal, for the most part, are actually ready to go. They're going to be in the depth chart. And I feel like now, offensive line coach, offensive line coach, Brian LePack has some options. This guy ain't getting it done. We're going to shuffle this guy in, maybe move someone out to tackle. Uh, I'm excited to see the offensive line as much as any position group because I don't know what the hell's going on, Big B. We don't know who the starters are other than Sam Hecht for sure at center. And this is going to be a fun process of discovering as they get guys back from injuries. And it's just Big B, the line has to be better. They just have to. They didn't protect well enough. And people always say, well, Avery didn't have a lot of sacks. Well, because he's Avery, he could run away, but then the play would be broken. And we saw bad things happen quite often.
Yeah, line has to be better. I mean, and that's just, I mean, I don't want to keep harping on it, but it just wasn't up to K-State standards last year. And I think everybody who pays attention to K-State football understands that. So they got to get back in the lab. They got to get better. The first part of it starts with just being physical, just moving somebody against their will and doing it on a consistent basis. And then also, look, I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but you got to be athletic. Offensive linemen have to be athletic. You got to be able to block out in space, especially when you have running backs now that you're trying to get the ball in space. You got to be able to do a multitude of things. You can't just be a road grader in today's football and think that's going to get the job done. It doesn't. You have to have multiple ways that you can block people inside, outside, whatever the case may be. And, you know, kind of what you said, brought in some guys that are ready to play. And look, they just have to get it done. You have to be able to start with protection, but start also with being physical. Yeah. And you can be physical in protection. I know a lot of people think you're pass blocking and you're passive. You don't necessarily have to be. When guys come at you, you can punch them, you know, right in the mouth, and you can stop people. It just starts with being physical. And really, the first play of the game kind of lets you know, just be physical with somebody and let them understand, hey, this is what you're in for all game long. It's going to be a fist fight. Are you ready for that? Because I'm going to fight you every single snap. If you can get that mindset with all the guys that are playing, then you've got a line, Fitz.
Yep. We're going to find out pretty quick, aren't we? And
we are.
We're also going to find out about new offensive coordinator Matt Wells. What does he bring to the table that Connor Riley didn't? What will he do differently? Not just because he's a different play caller, but because the personnel's different. What are you looking for from this offense? You touched on getting players in space, but I think they kind of found what they want to be in that bowl game a year ago when they did start spreading the ball out and, you know, spraying it to Dylan Edwards and Joe Jackson and the receivers. I thought the offense looked different in that bowl game because they used their personnel differently.
Correct. I think you got to spread people out. I think you've got to, again, personnel groups are key because today's day and age, people on defensive side matches your personnel group. Yeah. K-State has the fortune of having tight ends that can do a multitude of things. Now, you can bring in 13 personnel, which is 1 back, 3 tight ends. You can line them up in a tight set, and then all of a sudden those guys shift out, and then all of a sudden you've got 4 receivers out there, but even though 3 of them are tight ends, and then you got a defense scrambling on what to do, but then you can run the ball downhill. You know, it's just there's a lot of things that you can do. You just have to have some imagination. And look, it comes with obviously practice, but imagine the plays. Be different. Don't have the tendencies. You know, line up in something once, run a play, line up in the exact same formation and run something completely opposite of what you did before. You know, and I'm not saying in successive plays, but you just have to have imagination in today's football because I mentioned it before. Guys are bigger, faster, stronger on defense. And they're also smarter, Fitz. You can't just continuously run the same plays. guys are going to say, oh, you lined up like this? Yeah, you ran this play. Oh, you're going to do it again? I'm going to be right here. You just can't do that stuff. You have to be different. And I think we're going to get a lot of that too, Fitz. Just a lot of different personnel groups, a lot of different packages, a lot of innovation. And I don't want to say we're going to throw the ball more, but I think that's going to be part of it, Fitz. I don't want to say we're going to be a throw it 50 times a game or
Yeah.
something like that, but I think K-State's going to get the ball in the air a little bit more this year.
I have a feeling they're going to be throwing shorter passes.
Yeah.
When you got a Dylan Edwards and the tight ends you have, you let them catch the ball and operate a little bit. And I think that's what the offense was lacking sometimes was those passes that kept the defense honest and made them come up and make plays. I saw someone do this great analysis of the game of college football, and that it's really about creating one-on-one circumstances. And people always ask me, why was Bill Snyder able to win so many games with honestly inferior talent to the Oklahomas and Texases and other teams too? Because this guy found in his statistics that nobody created more one-on-one matchups than Bill Snyder. That was the point of whether he was running a spread-like offense with Chad May or the Wildcat with Michael Bishop. It was all about creating one-on-one matchups, and he did it masterfully. If K-State can get back to that, it changes the equation from their 11 is better than your 11 to this dude can't be stopped by that dude.
Correct.
And that's the way K-State needs to play, and that's what can make them successful on a national stage.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always been about, do you have the Joes or do you not?
Yeah.
That's always what it's been about. And then it becomes, once you figure that out, is my guy better than yours? That's why in the early 90s or mid 90s, you think back to like Steve Spurrier offense where they spread 5 wide. Well, it's because 5 wide receivers were always going to be better than 5 cornerbacks in college football. That's just the way it was. You get to the 5th cornerback in college football, especially at that time, that guy's not the best football player that out there. But that 5th receiver, yeah, he's pretty good. And that's the difference. You just have to find ways to get matchups to where you can say, our guy's better than yours. Let's get him the ball in space and let him do his thing. I think that's going to be a lot of what K-State does this year is just let guys do their thing. And not just running backs, wide receivers as well, at tight ends as well. It's just let's see where we can take advantage and exploit a defense, and then we'll just continue to do it, but do it differently every single snap.
Agreed. Defensively, we have a lot of question marks, not in the fact that they don't have talent. We just don't know who's going to all line up and be the starters. I was a little bit surprised to hear Joe Klanderman say Wesley Fair has emerged as one of the starting safeties. I knew Wesley was in the mix, but I didn't know he had separated.
Right.
That's going on right now in practice. There's going back to we don't know what's really happening behind closed doors. We don't know who's going to start. I just took a question earlier on the day we're recording on radio about which one of these defensive ends is going to emerge. I don't think the coaches know.
Right.
But this is a fun process. There's some dudes on this defense, and you start with Austin Romaine and Damian Ilalio and BJ Payne at the 3 different levels, but there's just dudes. They've got some players on defense this season.
They do. They've got some guys that can make some football plays out there that can run around, smack people in the mouth, chase people down, all that good stuff. But again, it starts up front.
Yep.
They're going to have to be physical. Going to have to see somebody emerge as a pass rusher, Fitz. That's one of the things that kind of lacked from K-State without blitzing. It seemed like a lot of times last year, and I don't think it seemed like, I think it actually was. K-State wasn't getting a lot of pressure unless they blitz 5, 6, sometimes 7 guys, which I'm not saying there's not a time for that. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is the better football team you can be is if you can generate pressure with 4 guys rushing up front and then not always having to blitz to get pressure. If K-State can figure that out and find a consistent pass rush without having to blitz, and then when you do, then it's a surprise, and then it's like, okay, Katie bar the door. But last year, it was way too often that K-State had to blitz in order to generate pressure. Not saying that it wasn't a good thing or they didn't generate it, but you make your back end susceptible to that. And while you're breaking in new guys, you don't necessarily want to do that. You want to have as much coverage back there as possible. So they got to be able to find a consistent pass rush.
We saw indications of issues early with Tulane.
Yes.
K-State was in a dogfight, and they just started blitzing like crazy. I remember after the game, Chris Kleiman joked that Joe Klanderman, said, "Do we want to keep blitzing?" And he's like, "Every play, just bring the pressure. They can't handle it." And we saw some breakdowns on the back end that led plays, but eventually you got the forced fumble, the scoop and score that changed the entire momentum of the game. But again, I think that was an all-out blitz.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Austin Romaine causing the fumble and safety Jack Faber scooping it up. That everyone was in the backfield. Let's start with those linebackers.
Yep.
Desmond Purnell on the outside, Austin Romaine on the inside. This is as good a long linebacker pair that K-State's had, I think, in a very long time.
Yeah, those guys. First of all, they're experienced.
Yep.
They understand where to be, and they have a really high football IQ. Fits. Yep. But they don't lack. Sometimes when you say that, then it's like they lack athleticism. Well, they don't lack athleticism. They don't lack football toughness. They just happen to be really good football players with really good football IQs, which is to the advantage of K-State. They've been around for a little bit. They're experienced. They've seen a lot of football, and they can make sure guys get in the right place. But they're tacklers too. Yeah. They're guys that'll come up and hit you and make a play, which is what K-State needs out of a linebacking core. Guys that know where to be, can make sure everybody else is where they need to be. It can also go and make a bunch of football plays for you.
Yeah, some questions marks about the third guy, Rex Van Wy, maybe the starter, the junior college transfer that has been seasoning in the program. We'll find out. But those two linebackers, first of all, I love them as players and as people. They're very good leaders, but they don't run their mouths.
Right.
They're business. And you mentioned the knowledge of football. They had to have that to survive. Des Purnell was thrown on the field as a redshirt freshman who had no business being on the field.
Correct.
Because of injuries. And then same thing happened a year later in 23 with Austin Romaine.
Yep.
He was the third guy out. Daniel Green down. Asa Newsom, another freshman, down. Austin Romaine, who was not physically ready for it, but he survived on instincts. And now they both look the part and have the part. I'm excited to see these two guys. I think Des Purnell is going to have a huge senior season because he sees what's ahead of him, and it's out there, isn't it? He can get to the league.
It is. Both guys, but yeah, I mean, when you've been around and you've seen all the football that those guys have seen, and everything starts to slow down for you, that's when football gets fun. And I think that it has really slowed down for them a lot to where they know they can recognize stuff and you just fly to the football and hit people. And I'm excited to see these two guys play some football this year. I mean,
Yep.
They're physical, they're fast, they're smart. And I'm glad they're on our football team because they can go make a bunch of plays and they make the defense better, Fitz, because not only can they do their job, but if somebody happens to make a mistake, they're good enough to cover up for somebody else's job. Now, not that we want that to happen, don't get me wrong, but when you have guys that, again, are that experienced, but also that good, that they can cover up sometimes where somebody may make a mistake and they can keep a play from getting out the gate on you.
There are some questions on this defense, but they're not necessarily concerns. We don't know who the defensive ends are going to emerge, but they feel like 4 guys are going to emerge as real big time playmakers. These guys that need to be on the field. We don't know who the corners are for sure, but we know the coaches like him. The one thing we know for sure is VJ Payne is going to be on the back end of this defense. And he's a guy that has steadily improved. I think he struggled at times last year because so many guys around him weren't doing their jobs correctly. And we've seen an incredible physical transformation in him. He's the fastest guy on the team. He's huge for safety. He's almost like a linebacker an outside linebacker. But most of all, with so many new faces on that back end, inexperienced, VJ's got to take everything to a new level as a player and a leader.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing about it is that he's a guy that super fast is going to become physical. He's now a leader. First off, I think he's built himself into an NFL draft pick. Fitz. That's the one thing is that I believe he's built himself into that, and I don't think there's any question about that. But I think with his ability and his versatility and the things that he can do, that's what's going to make K-State a better football team. Is that his versatility and being able to play a bunch of different people. You mentioned that, I have a Steelers channel that I do, and the Steelers just traded for Jalen Ramsey. Now, granted, I am not comparing VJ Payne to Jalen Ramsey, not even remotely. But what I am saying is that they're both big, they're both tall, super athletic, and they're versatile. They can go from safety, they can play nickel, they can play outside. And when you have a guy that's versatile like that and you can put him different places, and maybe he blitzes off the corner, maybe he locks up a guy outside, maybe he drops in safety and gives you a 3 safety look. Who knows? I just think his versatility, in my opinion, Fitz, is his biggest attribute. Well, his speed is his biggest attribute. Let's not kid ourselves. But then his versatility is right behind that. And I think he's going to make everybody better because, number one, he's going to hold people accountable. And number two, he can just do so many things. He can do so many things, and there doesn't seem to be a drop off when he does those.
Yep, I agree. This is going to be interesting on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to find out real quick. 3-man front, 4-man front, how often either one, who's emerging at these spots. And boy, you don't have time to mess around. Iowa State's good. Rocco Beck will carve you up if you're indecisive. He'll run it. He'll throw it. He's not pretty to watch, but he's effective. I love this matchup. Big B, is K-State going to get this done?
You know what? I think so. One of the things about Iowa State, while Iowa State's always a good team, they don't always start the season super fast. They don't always start the season as this juggernaut. I mean, they became a good football team last year, but they didn't necessarily start that way. I know they beat Iowa, but Iowa, what turned out, wasn't very good. Iowa was an average football team. And at the time, people made more big a deal of it than what it actually was. But Iowa State usually doesn't start the season that well. Now, I think they're thinking the same thing that K-State is like, look, I know we usually work ourselves into a season. We don't have an opportunity to do that now. We got to be ready to go game one at kickoff. That's what we're looking at. I'm not saying it kills either team to lose, but you don't want to lose. But I think K-State does get this done. First of all, I think K-State's better.
Yeah,
I really do. If I look at everybody, the rosters from both sides, I just think K-State's better. Doesn't mean that they're better by leaps and bounds, but and it might be a 1-point game. Okay, fine. We won by 1 point. Who cares? Because if we win them all by 1 point, Fitz, they give you a trophy at the end of that. And they don't ask you, did you blow everybody out? They just say, did you win? So I think K-State is the better football team. I think they're going to win. I think it'll be close. It'll be back and forth, I think. But I think K-State will have enough to win this football game because I think K-State's going to be able to stop Iowa State enough. That's what I believe. I think they're going to be able to stop what they do enough. Look, you lose 2 NFL draft picks, day 2 NFL wide receivers. I mean, come on. And it's – that hurts your football team, man, to lose. I don't care who you bring in after that. You're losing 2 guys that got drafted in the 2nd and 3rd round that are going to play a lot of football at the next level. You're not going to be as good as a receiving core. And for the most part, K-State did a decent job against them last year. I'm not saying that it was perfect, but it was a decent job for guys that are – one guy's going to start in the NFL this year. So they did a pretty good job. There's going to be a drop-off. I just think K-State's defense is going to do enough at the end, Fitz.
He is Brian Hanley. He will do this for us on a weekly basis. He does a lot of stuff for us. And, of course, check out his work at the Big 12 Insiders channel. always previewing the conference. As I mentioned earlier in the show, this is the game of the week. It was an easy pick. Granted, there's only 2 games this week, but this is the Big 12 game of the week for the insiders. Thank you, Big B. Appreciate it very much. And now let's head into our first break of the show and hear from one of our new sponsors, Wooden Cork. It's an online liquor store, but they specialize in finding rare bottles. And you got to go back there often because when those bottles show up, they disappear pretty quickly. Wooden Cork, boys, if you like a good bourbon or any other elite spirit, that's your place. We'll be right back. This is the K-State pregame show, and I am Fitz.
Looking for the rarest bottles at the best price? Experience the best alcohol delivery service. At Wooden Cork, we have your favorite bottles in stock and ready to be delivered to your door.
Visit woodencork.com and use the code LIFEOFFITZ for your special discount.
Welcome back to the K-State pregame show, sponsored by coldest.com and the Wooden Cork. Now we bring in our analyst, Cole Carmody, to talk about the Iowa State Cyclones. And Cole, this isn't easy. We haven't seen him play. It's like we're going to go off some notes and what the coaches have told us and your own analysis to establish where this team's at. And that is one of the tough things for not just us, but the coaches. You haven't seen the opponent play yet. And it's not just a non-conference opponent. It's a conference opponent.
Yeah.
It's a rival. It's a meaningful game. Maybe at the end of the season, who wins might be the one that gets the championship game. There's a lot at stake, but we're just kind of feeling around on what Iowa State is. We know this. Rocco Becht is back. I love Rocco Becht. I think he's so good. But the receivers are decimated, aren't they?
Yeah, that's the major storyline. It has been the major storyline, not just leading up to this game for this week, but really for Iowa State, the whole entire offseason is who the heck is going to catch the ball from Rocco Becht. Obviously, last year they lose Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. Both of them now are in Houston, getting drafted by the Houston Texans. How cool is that for those guys? But, you know, you look at this receiving core for Iowa State. They bring in Chase Sal from ECU. He was one of the better receivers for East Carolina last year. And the year before he was at Colorado. So third school in 3 years for Sal. They also bring in Xavier Townsend. Townsend, the UCF transfer. He saw very limited time last year for the Knights, but was one of their better players his first year on campus. So again, you got 2 guys who can they make that step forward? And I think it's very similar to where K-State's at that position, except they don't have that established guy. Another guy they're really leaning on and who they were going to lean on last year is a guy who was injured in fall camp and is just now coming back. He will be back for this season, but Daniel Jackson was injured in fall camp last year, missed the entire season. So even a guy who's a quote unquote returner who they expect a lot from didn't even play last year. So they're going to lean on their tight ends. We know how much K-State likes their tight ends, but I look at Iowa State. If they're going to have success throwing the ball, it's going to be thrown to those tight ends.
And Rocco Becht extends plays. He's not a great thrower. He's not a great runner. He's good at everything. And I keep making this comparison, and maybe this is too flattering. He's Max Duggan. He he wills his team to wins and always finds that extra play. But he also had incredible receivers a year ago that were always making themselves available because they were hard to cover for extended periods of time. I think they're going to have some issues early in this game, particularly trying to figure that out, who's available on those scramble situations.
And, you know, we think about last year, we use K-State as a frame of reference. Remember Dante Cephas? Everybody was so excited about his potential. Think back even, a few years before that, Jaden Jackson, people were excited about his potential. It's so hard for a quarterback and a wide receiver to be on the same page instantaneously in game one. Like that's the thing that I think people don't really understand is like, you know what? K-State's breaking in a new secondary. They absolutely are. But Iowa State breaking in a new receiving core in week one, I think is a little bit more of a storyline because it doesn't matter who you play against. If Iowa State was, I believe their second game is against South Dakota State, I want to say, who's a top 3 team in the FCS. Even if they were playing them in week 1, like that would still be an issue because that's more so dealing with your own personnel than your opponent. So I think Iowa State, if they're going to win this game, it's going to be because they run the ball, they dominate the line of scrimmage, and they turn this into a rock fight. I don't see a way where Rocco Beck throws for 350 yards and they put up 40 points and they win in a shootout. Could it happen? Sure. But I really do believe that Rocco Beck is not gonna be looking for those long developing routes down the field. We've seen Iowa State hit some big plays against K-State in the past. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be taking those deep shots like we've seen.
And how's that offensive line stack up this year?
The offensive line for Iowa State is, I would say, in a better position than where K-State currently sits in their offensive line. You look at some of the guys that they have on there. The guy who really sticks out more than anybody is Tyler Miller, a guy who has over a 30 game starting streak. Think back to what Christian Duffy was able to do for K-State just a few years ago. Miller is not going to blow you away, but he's there and he's solid. You look at his accolades, and it's this guy who, he's never been a first team All Big 12, but because of that starting streak, people know who he is. And so that's going to be a guy who really anchors their offensive line, but they will be breaking in a new center this year. And Fitz, we've talked about that before. That's the quarterback of the offensive line. So how does that look in week 1? I don't know, but I do know that I'm not really worried. You shouldn't be worried if you're an Iowa State fan about the offensive line, because that seems to be a strength of this group right now, along with those running backs, Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. Fitz, I'm sure we're going to talk about them here in a second. But again, it does feel like if Iowa State's going to have success on offense, it's going to be because not only those guys up front, but that running game that they possess.
Just the words Abu Sama makes K-Staters have flashbacks.
Yeah.
Flashbacks of a very snowy day and a guy named Sama just running wild through that snow while K-State's defense slipped all over the place. He wasn't as effective last year in normal weather as he was on that day, but he's still pretty good. They use their running backs to great effect, don't they?
They do. And Abu Sama was very underwhelming last year. Like, you go back and you look at his statistics after that breakout game against K-State to end the season the year prior. I think everybody in Ames was really excited, and Carson Hansen beat him out. I mean, he straight up beat him out, and he was their primary back for most of the season. And wouldn't you know it, Abu Sama decides to turn back the clock 365 days against K-State. You're right, Fitz. He didn't have the 200 plus rushing yards he had in Manhattan, but he still went for over 80 yards on 15 carries. And he was, tough to beat. I do think Carson Hansen's probably a little bit more of a well-rounded back for Iowa State. But again, they return both of those guys. And so K-State's in a very difficult position here. Like, what are they going to do? If you key in and you try and stop that run game, well, you do have a very, very solid quarterback in Rocco Becht, who, if he's on the same page with his receivers, can beat you over the top. Iowa State, I think this year, if they want to have success, they're going to have to run the ball very much more than they did in the past. But, these matchups, it really doesn't matter who's playing, Fitz. Like, we can sit here and we can talk about the personnel, but these games are always close. Always. Yeah. It doesn't matter these games are always close. It's just going to be a matter of who can win the turnover battle and make the big plays when they happen.
They've had K-State's number. Matt Campbell is what they've won 3 straight in this series, 2 of them in Manhattan. They've just done a really good job scouting K-State. So that takes us over to the defensive side of the ball. They bottled up K-State's offense pretty well. They got Avery into some turnovers and all that stuff. But I don't know what this defense is going to be for the Cyclones. Again, it's the opening game, but give me your overall breakdown of the defense.
Well, we know they love the 3-3-5, and that's kind of like been their calling card the last few years. And quite honestly, Fitz, like, I'm interested to see if that's something that they stick with, right? Like, nobody expected K-State to come out in a 4-man front. Think back to I guess it would have been the 3-3-5 when they played Stanford. Everybody was shocked when they came out in a 3-3-5. Stanford wasn't ready for it. I don't think very many folks, well, maybe the cat's out of the bag now. We do think K-State's going to run some 4-man front this season. So teams would be a little bit prepared for that. But is that something Iowa State does? Will they throw some 4-man front in there? This, football, it's an interesting game because, it just goes in a circle, right? It always comes back. So I'm interested to see if Iowa State tries to do any of that, especially because when you look at their defense, they lose a ton of production. I look at their defensive line and there's nobody that really sticks out, right? Like they lose almost all of their sack production, which is obviously a cause for concern. And I guess you could kind of say the same thing for K-State. Losing the Big 12 defensive lineman of the year and Brendan Mott that's a big deal. And so how will K-State replace that? Around these parts, we like to say they have depth. I couldn't tell you what the word is in Ames, but I do know that just by looking at the statistics, it'll tell you there's going to be some question marks there. The linebacker position's a lot better for them. Caleb Bacon was a rotational piece last year, but that's a guy who they expect a lot out of. He's going to be probably one of the better linebackers in the Big 12. Carson Willich from around this area, that's another guy who has some production. A lot of guys who have been in the system. Right. That's the one thing I look at with Iowa State across the board. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They're all redshirt sophomores. They're all redshirt juniors. They've been in the system. So even if they don't have that production, I think people in Ames are really excited because they feel like, okay, now it's their time.
They're really solid on defense. And I can't remember, was it Matt Wells or Chris Kleiman that said, they just don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
They're in the right place at the right time, doing the right things. And if you do that, you're going to be a pretty good defense. Add in special players, you're going to be a really good defense. And that's what we're going to find out. But K-State is going to shuffle its offense a little bit, we think. I think we're going to see some different things now that DJ Giddens is out and Dylan Edwards is in. That changes things quite a bit. Do you think K-State can give this defense trouble with all that speed they're going to have on the offense side of the ball this year?
I do. I mean, that's the one way I think K-State wins this game is they're going to be able to out-athlete them.
Yeah.
How many times have we said that, Fitz? Like it feels like the last 15 years that hasn't been something K-State's been able to do. But I think we're going to have that. We're going to say that term a lot this year. K-State's going to be able to athlete teams. I look at this Iowa State team, and again, the secondary. If there's one spot on this team where I think K-State can really, really expose Iowa State, it's in the secondary. They got John Tez Williams, who's a lockdown corner for Iowa State. There's no doubt about it. But beyond that, it gets very, very hairy for the Cyclones. And you know what? Again, very good reason for Iowa State to look at K-State secondary and say the same thing. But I do believe that K-State, and you mentioned their team speed, it doesn't matter who is playing, even if it's a very experienced secondary. I still believe that K-State is going to find ways. Matt Wills will find ways to get the ball in space to Dylan Edwards, get the ball in space to Garrett Oakley. That's a guy we're not talking enough about, is Garrett Oakley. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And I think K-State has a really, really good opportunity to score a lot of points against this Iowa State defense.
It's going to be interesting, Cole. We'll both be there along with Ryan Gilbert. And, well, heck, most of our staff will be there. Some will just be out watching it. But this is an intriguing game. This is a heck of a way to start a football season. I don't think this Aer Lingus Classic has had this type of rivalry, high-stakes matchup yet. And I think the folks over there are really excited to have a game that has a cool nickname in Farmageddon and two teams that get after each other.
Yeah, they do. And just for college football in general, like you take a step back, you see that you're starting the year off with a top 25 matchup. I mean, I don't know the last time that's happened in week 0 where two teams ranked inside the top 25 have played. I'm sure there's a statistic out there available that will tell us. But I mean, between that and then, as you mentioned, the rivalry aspect of this game, like if you're just a football fan, not even a college football fan, I feel like the appeal is going to be there. And how many images on the broadcast are we going to get of that snow game? Are we going to get of Chris Kleiman hugging Gene Taylor on the sideline when K-State finally won that game up there in Iowa? Like the storylines galore here. Two similar programs, two similar fan bases. It really is going to be an outstanding game. And even though it's in Ireland, it is still a rivalry game, and we know how that always plays out.
You got it. I'm not even going to ask you about special teams. We can't figure out K-State. How are we going to scout Iowa State with no film? Does K-State get this done? Cool.
I do. I really believe that they will win this game. You know, we've talked a lot about question marks on both sides, but ultimately what I think this game comes down to is who do you trust more at the quarterback position? And, as far as who can make the bigger play, I think across the board, people will tell you that that's Avery Johnson. Rocco Beck did a really good job last season, but, folks kind of forget that he threw 25 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, and Avery Johnson threw 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So the turnovers were not as costly for Rocco Beck as they were for Avery Johnson. But who can make the big play? I think it's number 2. And I think behind Avery Johnson, K-State finds a way. I think we'll see a nice little offensive outburst. I do think this will be a pretty close game, Fitz, but I really, really am high on K-State's offense, and I think that's going to be the reason why they win this game.
He's Cole Carmody. He's going to be breaking down the opponents all season long for us. Cole, I appreciate it very much. And after this break, we'll hear from the sponsors. And I tell you what, we're going to bring in some new stuff here at the end of the show. I'm going to give you the big games in the Big 12. There's not many this weekend. And we'll take a look at a quote from someone important. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go. We'll be right back.
From the house to the car to your tailgate, Coldest.com offers elite insulated tumblers. Imagine yourself standing in the football stadium's parking lot and you want to keep your drink cold or hot. Coldest gets the job done. They're leak-proof, come in numerous designs and sizes, holding up to 46 ounces. And here's the best part. With your Coldest mug, no one needs to know what you're really drinking. Coldest.com. Use the code LIFEOFFITZ for a 10% discount.
Welcome back to the show. And now let's take a look at the schedule in the Big 12 for Week 0 of the college football season. There's a light schedule because it is Week 0. But the Big 12 Insiders game of the week was easy to pick. It's Farmageddon in Dublin, Ireland, Kansas State versus Iowa State in the Aer Lingus Classic. The game kicks off Saturday, August 23rd in Dublin's Aviva Stadium at 11 a.m. Central and 5 p.m. local time in Dublin. It will be shown on ESPN. The only other game this weekend is at the rebuilt David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium, pitting KU against Fresno State. The game kicks at 5:30 p.m. and will be broadcast on Fox. Now let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio and your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome back to the K-State pregame show. I am Fitz, and now let's hear from K-State's coordinators. We won't always do that throughout the year, but we had those press conferences early because, well, they didn't have time during the game week because they'll be traveling. Here's Matt Wells and Joe Klandman with a couple thoughts that I thought you would like to hear.
We all probably look at it with a real critical eye at times, but when you look back, I see some areas I think were probably better last year, and then I think there's some areas that we all need game day to tell us some answers on. But man, these guys are really, really working hard. They're grinding. They're staying together. I think this is I hope it is a tough-minded group. We will go through some adversity. We know that, whether it's an injury or it's something didn't go right or something, somebody comes out in the front that we didn't prepare for, and how do you handle that? And we've tried to put them through some of those situations, but we do have some guys that have played ball. I rest easier in that, knowing you've got a quarterback that's played, 14 games and started, and there's some starts on that O-line. There's a few of them that have played in other places that are here. Tight end room's really experienced. Jace played in a lot of games. Tibbs and JB have played in a lot of games, not in a Wildcat uniform, but in a lot of games. Dylan's played in games, and Joe. So I think I take that as a positive because I know how I think they're going to be. But also we've got some of those guys I just mentioned that's a little bit new and improved. It's a newer version of them, and I'm excited to go out and watch them all together. I think he's probably more comfortable in his own skin, in his own ability. I don't have to be this certain type of player. I don't need to listen to the media or somebody ask me about being a certain prototypical blank kind of quarterback. I'm good when I run. I'm good when I throw it. I think he is further along in coverage recognition. I think he is further along in his ability to dissect what a defense is doing to him a little quicker. And that takes time. It takes live reps, and that takes a lot of looks. And you got to battle for whoever that second quarterback is. That's something I see is ongoing. Not close to naming a guy. I don't know if Coach will. I don't know where that is. That it's not an alarm. That's guys at different stages of their careers in that room right now. They're all working hard, and there are abilities there, and I'm straining them as best I can in a practice setting. It's not easy, but being a backup quarterback's not easy. I mean, we may not play a backup quarterback here for 2 years, and it may be. I tell them it may be 2 days.
I'll just say it to you this way. I feel pretty good about our starters, and I think the thing was, who are those next guys that are going to play significant snaps? And Coach, we did a little situational walkthrough out there today, and Coach called out the second defense, and they got together in a little group, and I looked at that group of guys, and I'm like, there's some pretty dang good football players here. I mean, they're good-looking kids. They're kids that know what they're doing. They're kids that I would trust to be out there. I don't know. I think a lot of groups have made a great leap. I think probably the group that has impressed me the most with the progress they've made since the spring is the corners. Just watching Zayshawn Rich and Donovan McIntosh, Justice Clemens, Jaden Rowe playing with confidence. It's fun to watch those guys right now. And that was probably the biggest question mark, losing the two seniors from a year ago. Obviously, both of them very good players, and I don't think we're going to drop off there at all. I think he's a very smart football player, very poised football player. I think he is sneaky in the way that he can extend plays. He's got a kind of a innate ability to find scramble lanes typically internally, and causes a lot of problems for people that way. So it makes you a little bit leery of some of the things you're doing coverage-wise with him. He's probably not going to win a beauty contest or a 40-yard dash against some of the quarterbacks in the league, but he probably is as capable of a scrambler as anybody. So I have much respect for him.
That's our coaches segment of the show, and now let's take it home. And I'm going to return to this that I used to do, and I think it's really important to probably bring this back up. It's called our biggest key of the game. And the biggest key of the game for me is, well, you can guess it. Avery Johnson has to be good. He has to take that next step, not just as a playmaker, but as a decision maker and a leader. He can't let mistakes tear down his game. One mistake often led to another mistake. And as a quarterback, you can't do that. And he knows it. He has done a marvelous job of self-evaluation and understanding exactly what he did wrong. Now, the question is, has he corrected it? I think we're going to find out fairly quickly in this game, and against what is historically a pretty good defense. While we don't know a whole lot about the personnel right now on Iowa State's defense and who really will step up and be their guys, they're extremely well coached. They will be in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and that is attempting to stop Avery Johnson. At the end of the day, football's a lot like chess. You move the pieces around and hope to create an advantage, to find that opening, to find a weakness in that defense. And Avery Johnson is going to have to do that in this game if the Cats want to be good. It's the start of a brand new season, and it happens on Saturday in Dublin, Ireland. Kickoff 11 a.m. right here in the States. And for those of us that are going to be at the game, it's 5 p.m. local time. Just the perfect time to get in without being too late at the field. I am excited for this season. I'm excited for this game, and I'm excited for the new show that we're doing. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back every week before a game to do this same exercise. That's it for this edition of the K-State pregame show. We appreciate our sponsors, Coldest.com and the Wooden Cork. And I am Fitz, and I'll see you at the Bill, hopefully next weekend.
Thank you for watching the K-State pregame show. Make sure you're subscribing to this YouTube channel, and please share your thoughts in the comments. Also, please support our sponsors, Coldest.com and WoodenCork.com, and remember the code LifeOfFitz for your discount. This has been a Go Power Cat and Spirit Street production.